Matt in Buffalo, thanks for hanging on.
Am I on?
You are.
You are on at last.
Bet you thought that wouldn't happen.
You guys were very patient with that last caller. I commend you.
Well, we try.
That's.
I really enjoy your show. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
Sure, what do you got?
A couple weeks ago, I was witnessed to by a pair of Jehovah's Witnesses. And normally I would have just closed the door, but I guess I was in a good enough mood to humor them. And, being a doomsday religion, essentially, the first thing they have to convince you of is that the world is going to hell in a handbasket, and you have to make the right decision right now, immediately. Mm-hmm.
Which I've always thought was weird for them, because don't they have this whole only 144,000 people get through the door thing?
Well, they think that 144,000 reign in heaven.
Okay. Anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Please go on.
God. No, it's all right. It's all right. But anyway, they believe that everyone else who is not part of the 144,000 that is also saved reigns on earth in a physical realm.
Okay, whatever.
So, it is a bit strange. Mm-hmm. But anyway, they sort of took it as a given that I was simply going to accept this premise that the world is awful and getting worse and worse every day. So much so that they almost didn't even pause to wait for my response. And I did respond, and I said I don't agree with that. I said, in fact, I think in many ways the world is better than it's ever been.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Mm-hmm. Right. And a curious thing happened at that point, which I did not expect. I had been witnessed to by Jehovah's Witnesses before. And one of them was just awestruck by the fact that I did not simply take it for granted that this was a true premise. Right.
Wait, you're not following my script.
He sounded like a broken record. He was he was just shaking his head and blinking. And, well, how can you not think this?
Yeah.
And the other one was kind of quiet for a moment, and he said, "Well, why don't you think that?" And I was impressed with that question. I really was. It was not something that a Jehovah's Witness had ever asked me before.
Okay.
And I have Jehovah's Witnesses in my extended family, so it's something that I've been exposed to from time to time.
All right.
And that is simply not a question that they ask very often, at least in my experience.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now it was only a short conversation. We weren't obviously going to fully convince anyone to change their minds on an opinion, but it did get me to thinking about the nature of false belief versus dogma. And I know, Matt, that something you're fond of saying on your show is your belief informs your actions.
Yeah.
And I certainly agree with that. I think it's true. But I also think that it's incomplete. I also believe that your actions can inform your beliefs. And because he took a second, for whatever reason, to simply ask why I felt a certain way, I actually got him to nod, at least in implied agreement to some of the things I was saying. I don't know that I actually changed his mind on anything.
Yeah.
Well, you exposed him to a perspective that he has simply never been exposed to before.
Well,
and,
the one that took the time to listen to me was substantially younger than the other. I don't know if that had anything to do with it. The more resistant one was a guy he looked to be in his late middle age. Mm-hmm. And he may have just had longer to root himself into to an unchanging belief.
Yeah, probably.
But I think that ultimately the biggest obstacle is not false belief, not even strongly held false belief, but rather the inability to ever change your mind.
Right.
And I saw both of those things right in front of my face from people that I wouldn't ever have expected to see it from.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah.
It's rare that it happens, but it's good when it happens.
The rareness is what actually inspired me to call you in the first place. I thought it was not something that I had ever seen before.
Well, cool. Thanks a lot for calling.
Yeah, and you're probably right that it's the older fella has had much longer to get set in his ways, and you do get set in your ways as you get older, and so you're right. Not to say that you will have fully rescued the younger guy from his indoctrination from that, but the point is you did expose him to a way of thinking about things that was different than he had been exposed to, and he's still perhaps a little bit receptive to at least acknowledging that there's another way of thinking out there instead of just blindly parroting what he's being told.
Right. Well, I'm not hoping for a rapid, deep change, but we all start somewhere, right?
Well, in many ways, when you're going around assessing how good or bad something is, you're doing it with respect to your expectations instead of making a determination of whether or not something is better than it used to be or worse than it used to be. So if you don't get the raise you were expecting, you might overlook the fact that you still got a raise. And when you have a religion where your expectations of what the world should be could never possibly be met, where they are these, absolutely insane utopian ideas, and by the way, they know full well that it won't be met, then any departure from that can be kind of expanded as, oh, look how much worse we are. Once upon a time we had prayer in schools and now we don't. Well, yeah, I'd say that's that's an improvement. Sorry.
Thanks a lot, guys, for taking my call.
Hey, thank you.
Thanks for waiting.
All right.